Hello and welcome to the OverSeers once again. I'm Nightwing, joined by Proelios. Uh, this is another one of our team previews for the 2022 season of the Overwatch League. And today we're going to be discussing the Seoul Dynasty. So, this is a team that's, obviously had a very strange kind of ride throughout the Overwatch League. They've gotten very close to greatness, and sometimes you wonder if they're even taking the game seriously. It's a very interesting team to watch. So going into Overwatch 2, um, they have a roster of Fitz, Prophet, Creative, Stalker, Smurf, and Vindaim. So we're going to be discussing about what we think about this holds for the roster, and we're going to be discussing the coaching staff and yeah, so we're going to start off with our usual format. We'll discuss tanks first, then DPS, and then supports. So let's kick it off with the only tank on this roster, Smurf. What do you think about Smurf, Proelius?
I think Smurf is a great signing by Seoul. Smurf is naturally known for his Winston play in the Overwatch League, but has also shown us some amazing ball and Orisa play in the past as well. And all in all, he has he has really solid mechanics and will probably prove to be a high value signing for the Seoul Dynasty. His mechanical prowess indicates that he might have an edge over other main tanks that don't have great aim, especially considering that he will have to flex to off tanks a lot more. So I think he'll fit in this role quite well, and just a good move by Soul all in all.
Yeah, so I think I'm sort of on the same page as you. I think for me, Smurf is just one of the greatest of all times, like main tanks out there. I think obviously with other greats such as Fearless and Super, etc. I think just like with basically anyone else, I think solo tanking is going to be a challenge for him, but it also provides him the opportunity to become, a mainstay in the roster, unlike his situation on the Shock. So he's going to be able to show his complete potential, which I think people have been really waiting for quite a while. Is they wanted Super and Smurf to sort of, be on their own teams to some degree and have them all, like show their whole range of main tank capabilities instead of them just subbing in when their particular hero was, the meta. And so, in that sense, it's going to be really interesting to see how Smurf now adapts to an insanely large pool of tanks to choose from, and how he does in different play styles according to those tanks. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I think if there's someone I trust uh, to solo tank in the Overwatch League, I think Smurf is right up there with some of the other greats. So yeah, I think it's going to be super fun to see him play on a team separately and as a mainstay of the roster without being subbed in and out. So yeah, any other comments, Perlis, or should we go to the DPS line?
Yeah, I think we covered Smurf quite well there. Let's move on to the DPS.
All right. So on DPS, the Soul Dynasty have got Fitz, Prophet, and Stalker. So let's kick it off with the existing DPS first. So let's talk about Prophet first.
And I think Prophet is naturally another like greatest of all time DPS player in the Overwatch League. He is kind of in a situation similar to Fitz. I'll touch upon this when we get to talking about Fitz, but all in all, Prophet is a really smart and flexible player, as we all know. He's just known for his insane tracer play, but can play literally any DPS under the sun to at least a serviceable level. And the only gap in his gameplay really was his Echo in season 3, but he drastically improved his gameplay on her as well last year. So I think that's like a really great position to be in from him individually. But I feel like with him, his value kind of scales with the resources obtained from his team. Um, it's okay. I'll just talk about this now. So I think with Fitz and Profit, right? Um, they didn't get a lot of resources from their tanks and supports for the past couple of years, which is why the value seemed a little bit diminished on this roster. You saw a lot of times that Gesture, Marvel, 2U, who were the tanks for the team, they were drawing a lot more resources from the support line, because of which Prophet and Fitz couldn't get a lot of great positioning, or they couldn't take extra engages, and they couldn't be more impactful in general. So although I think both of them are really like solid players, I think the team needs to utilize them, like the team needs to give them more importance and more resources. Otherwise, there's no point in them staying on this roster and like for the organization to try and push for a championship, because these two have been their star players for a while, and they deserve more resources and they need more resources, especially if this organization is to aim for the playoffs, aim for those deep playoff runs. So that's just my take. And since I've mentioned Fitz, I'll also just go over him. I think Fitz had a great season individually last year, but like I said, he couldn't excel because of the lack of support. And even despite that, he showed that he had great raw mechanical aim, especially on heroes like Cass, Ash, Hanzo. He also plays a good Sombra, even though he couldn't get a lot of value from her last year, kind of like Hisu. But all in all, it's the same situation with both of them, right? So, yeah. I don't know if anyone else has observed this, especially you, Nightwing. So why don't you chime in on it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about the resources that Fitz and Profit have got. They've managed to make the best out of that low resource situation even then, and that's why there's some of the most premier DPS in the Overwatch League still, and one of the best, I think, DPS duos at least currently. I think Profit going into Overwatch 2, he's going to have to pick up a lot of new heroes again. His showing with the Echo showed that that flexibility was called a little bit into question because of that Echo, but like you said, he did improve it over time. Hopefully, he's able to get on the ground running, a bit faster, um, as this season is going to be a lot more competitive, and there's going to be a lot, probably more variety of heroes to learn. So I think Prophet is the man for the job in that case, and Fitz will pick up his traditional hit scans along with snipers and a few more heroes here and there. I think in terms of Fitz's Sombra, uh, I think it's hard to really fault him for that. I think the only truly successful Sombra last year was Lip from the Shanghai Dragons. I think you saw basically every quote unquote classically good Sombra sort of struggle. And I think going into this next year, I think uh, maybe Fitz can show that he's still got it on the Sombra as well. So I think that sort of remains to be seen. Uh, and I think that's probably enough about the DPS that have been retained by the Seoul Dynasty. Do you want to start us off about Stalker, the new DPS that they've signed?
Sure. So, Stalker is a Flex DPS who has been promoted from Gen G, which is Seoul Dynasty's contenders team, after almost 4 years of grinding contenders with them. All in all, I've seen his gameplay in patches across many metas, and I think his best hero is probably the Tracer. Like he definitely has been the best player in Gen G as of late, just because of his showings on Tracer, and I think at least on that hero he'll be competitive at the Overwatch League level, but I don't think he's going to be a standout player other than that, because I haven't really seen him playing like being an explosive player on those fronts. But like I think with Profit on the team, it's unlikely that he will see a lot of playtime in general, because Profit can play pretty much anything Stalker can play. Heroes like the Genji, the Pharah, obviously the Tracer. But Stalker's probably just going to be benched and made to learn new heroes, maybe like the Sojourn, which does require some tracking aim and some projectile aim. But all in all, we'll see. I really don't know how they're going to use Stalker, but I'm just not excited about the pickup too much. What about you, Nightwing?
Yeah, I mean, the signing is a little bit odd for me because I don't really see any major success from Stalker in terms of like actually producing a lot of results uh, in his professional career in contenders. And it isn't like he was the best or the cream of the crop in terms of rookie DPS talent either. I think he was all right on the tracer. I think that's something he can be competitive on. But then again, you've already got Profit on your team. So do you really need like a probably average tracer at best when you've got one of the world's best? I don't really know. I think it's more likely that you'd probably see Profit play the tracer, and then, like you said, Proteus, Stalker picks up some of the other heroes, especially the new ones being released in Overwatch 2. That said, Stalker has not shown excessive flexibility. I think the heroes that he's flexed over to sort of get by in contenders. I've seen a little bit of his May. It was nothing to write home about. I mean, it was all right, and it worked well in the context of the composition his team was playing, but it was nothing exceptional. Um, he's not a super hyped up Echo like players like Alpha E or something along those lines either. So I think it's a little bit of a strange situation because you would expect that, Seoul has this negotiating power just because, they're the only Korean based team. And most of the players in the Overwatch League are Korean. So you would think that they would have sort of a home field advantage in terms of picking up talent, but they've gone with Stalker. So I'm assuming that either other rookie DPS players were asking for way too much money, or Stalker was genuinely really, really good in tryouts and seemed to gel well with the team. And if that's the case, then maybe there's, some merit to signing him. And uh, that will really have to be seen, I think. Overall, not a bad DPS line. Profit and Fitz are very solid duo, and Stalker is still a good addition and adds a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more options to the Soul Dynasty. So, what do you think about this DPS line as a whole, Prentice?
I think this DPS line can be really good if, like I said, they get more resources. I think Stalker's best saved for emergencies and to pick up new heroes and see if he can, you know, play better than Fitz and Profit on any of them. Um, I think if the situation remains as it has always been, the DPS line will probably not go beyond league average because I think this game being more DPS centric requires the DPS to have more resources, especially, so like with the new head coach at the helm and with some new pickups, I think it's worth trying out a whole new playstyle. So they can be really good if they get more resources, but otherwise, just they'll just be league average, I think. What about you?
I think in the context of the APAC region, I think Profit and Fitz can definitely still hold their own. I mean, I would still probably only put them definitely below maybe the Shanghai Dragons and potentially the Chengdu Hunters. I think it's really anyone's game in terms of the other teams left in the APAC region. I think uh, Seoul Dynasty is probably, like, in terms of the DPS line, almost a solid third, unless the Philadelphia Fusions signings or the Hangzhou Sparks signing seems turn out to be really, really good. So in that sense, I think they've still got a solid shot, and I think it's a pretty decent DPS line. Um, anyway, I'm a DPS player, so I ramble too much about DPS players. Let's move on to the supports. On support, they've got this year they've got Creative, held on from last year, and then they've got Vindaim, who's been signed from O2 Blast onto the Soul Dynasty. So let's start off with the player that they've retained, Creative. Um, I personally thought that Creative was not ever really an exceptional flex support, if I'm being honest. I think he gets a lot of hype, and it's sometimes more than he's really shown in pure hard results, I feel. Um, I think Creative is still, above average. I think and that's still saying a lot because flex support talent is just insanely competitive. That said, Creative is not really someone that I honestly look to make clutch plays. I think it's still the DPS line for me. I don't think he particularly uh, managed, that resource providing really well either. Obviously, some of that can be attributed to, the tanks being all over the place last year as well. But I don't know. I think there are definitely better flex support talents at the very, very top, because when you're looking at a roster like the Soul Dynasty, you have to see, can they actually grab wins, right? Can they win these tournament finals? Can they win, some playoff games? That's where I'm at with the Soul Dynasty, and I think creative might just be slightly behind some of the very top flex supports, and that might be a difference maker in my eyes. What do you think, Prolius?
I'm I might be a little bit uh, in the hot take region over here, but I feel like Creative was one of the weaker flex supports in the league this year. I wasn't a fan of his, like based on his gameplay last year. I don't think he turned many heads at all. Like his quality of play was just mediocre, and you couldn't really point out that, oh, he's playing Ana really well, or he's playing Zen or Moira or Bap really well. I think he was just kind of there, and he was doing what needed to be done, but he wasn't doing anything amazing. So I feel like if he doesn't step up his game, he could be a major point of weakness for this team. Um, I honestly think he's probably one of the weakest players on the roster right now. And like I don't think you can just be a serviceable flex support and turn heads in the league or make many plays in the league anymore. Like Creative's mechanics are all right, his awareness is all right, his cooldown usage is just okay, but like we were just discussing with Aztec and Skyripa for the Vancouver Titans. Like I think he might be somewhere around their level, to be honest. I'm not really a fan of his. Um, Maybe I'm just not reading like his gameplay correctly, or maybe I haven't observed him doing the right things. But just after watching his gameplay for a couple of years, I'm just not too hyped for him.
No, I think that's a fair assessment, honestly. I think sometimes creative has just been saved because the rest of the team, chaotic as they are, have done well for themselves. I don't think creative has really ever been that insane playmaker that many other flex supports at the very top level need to be. And yeah, I think I agree that he might just be a weakness for this team in this season. That said, I want to move on. Let's talk about Vindaim. So, what do you think about Vindaim, Brothers?
Now, Vindaim's an interesting one. So Vindaim's a main support player coming in from O2 Blast, and I haven't watched much of his gameplay, so I can't really comment on how good he is. But from what I did see, he played a fairly good brig for his team last year, and he has won 2 seasons of contenders while being a part of O2 Blast's player rotation. He was sharing playtime with Chio, and they both had their, I guess, like fair share of playtime. It wasn't like either one of them was benched a lot. So they were utilized well. Vindaim did play well, and he's been playing all throughout, so he must have a lot of talent. Uh, he doesn't have much pro experience in general, so if he's hitting these levels of play so early in his career, I think we can expect him to be quite competitive in the league. So I'm just all in all quite excited to see him play, because it's not very often that you see such an unknown quantity entering the Overwatch League. I think Juby was one of them last year for the Houston Outlaws. Before that, it was Sanguina for the London Spitfire. So these just like main support pickups, which haven't really seen a lot of playtime, are really interesting. So, like, I think especially seeing how well Sanguina played in season 3, just at least relative to his team, I think Vindaim could be a really solid pickup, especially considering that the head coach of the Seoul Dynasty is Tobi, who's an ex-main support player, so he really understands what's required of a main support. So I'm in general positive about this pickup.
So, I have a bit of a different take on this. I think the things I do agree with is that, yes, Toby is the head coach, so he might be able to instill, that veteran knowledge into Vindaim, even if he doesn't have that, first-hand experience, because he's only really played in 2021 and has basically nothing in the books before that. He's also been, but yeah, I think the way I see it, the fact that he's been sharing playtime with Chio and that he's only played for a year, that basically puts his playtime to 6 months in some sense. even if he might have been, scrimming and practicing with the team, his on stage time has not been excessive. I think, considering that this is a season with, longer matches, like a larger volume of matches than the previous seasons, it's going to be a long season, and the fact that he's not a veteran suggests to me that he may just crack under pressure. I think this team has to be handled very like carefully, and this is a player whose talent might be there, but the fact that his experience is just not there almost whatsoever, despite him, winning one season and looking 1 or 2 seasons and looking decent there, I think still does raise some questions for me. That said, they're going into a new game. The play styles are going to be different. So, in some sense, everyone's a rookie. But I don't know. I think to some fundamental level, Overwatch still remains the same. And I think, uh, considering that they don't really have a backup on support for the Seoul Dynasty, I I really want to see Vindaim developed into like proper player with a good mental, because his experience does not suggest to me immediately that that will be the case. So yeah, any more thoughts to add about him?
No, not specifically about Vindaim. I do think all in all that the support line is probably the weakest part of this team. It's still a pretty good support line. It's not like a horrendously bad one, uh, but like it's just a bit lackluster, right? Plus, I'm concerned that like they might run into some double flex support metas that they might not be able to play well in. Just because Vindaim isn't known for any flex support heroes, but yeah, that's all I really have to say about these guys now.
Yeah, okay. I think I agree with that. I think they'll struggle with the double flex support meta as well. Okay, then we can move on to the coaching staff. So we've got head coach Tobi, who used to be a player, obviously, for the Seoul Dynasty. You've got Wizard Hyung, who is the head of strategy and a data coach for them. You've got MMA, and you've got Bongwoori. MMA is an assistant coach, and Bongwoori is an analyst for them. Then they've got a few more analysts there as well. So the big elephant in the room is, how good will Toby's coaching be? What do you think, Prolius?
I think even though I did mention that, Toby must have scouted Vindaim and saw something special in him and, all that stuff, I do think Toby is a super confusing choice of head coach. Because let's face it, right? Toby has zero experience as a professional coach, let alone in a head coach position. And being a coach is very different from simply advising your fellow teammates when you're playing for a franchise, right? Because I'm sure he's done plenty of that while playing with rookies on the Soul Dynasty. But it's very different when you're officially a coach. That said, he's certainly well respected within the community. But like the decision of the organization to hedge their bets on a rookie coach, a rookie head coach, is super confusing. I think just because of their long term relationship with Toby, they are hyping him up a little bit. They're probably just super confident that he's going to work well with them and the management and be able to manage the players really well as well. But I'm not a fan of this decision. I think there's a lot of grooming to be done before uh, you can take on such a huge responsibility. So I'm just not a fan of this decision to put Toby here. Although I can't really see anything about his capability as a coach. What is your take on this signing?
Yeah, I don't understand, how is it that if you're the Seoul Dynasty, right? You're the team that every Korean wants to be on, because you don't want the hassle of, moving to North America. You don't want the hassle of getting visas and all that, just painful process. Um, but you sign a coach who has never coached even in an assistant coach position before. You sign a player. Now, I have a lot of respect for Toby as an Overwatch player, and I'll give him the merit of the fact that, whenever you thought that the Soul Dynasty, signed someone to replace him, he would just gobble that person up after a few short matches. You would see that Toby has just downloaded, whatever the new meta is, and then he would play significantly better than uh, whatever replacement they signed for Toby. So in that sense, he does have a very good understanding of the game. He's been there right since the beginning, since 2016, and Toby is a very good veteran presence to have around. That said, I don't know if head coach is the position for him. I think it's really a shame that the Seoul Dynasty probably missed out in signing a really good head coach and then putting Toby as an assistant coach, because I could totally see Toby still doing decently well as an assistant coach. I think because of his understanding of the game and the way that he's worked, around Overwatch for many years. I think the head coach position makes it sort of hard for me to really swallow uh, what the Seoul Dynasty will be doing this season, because I don't know who's really going to help them come up with proper comps to execute. I don't have a lot of faith in Wizard Young either, so I don't know where the strategy part of working around the clock to come up with strategies for Overwatch to where that comes from, because I don't really see anyone in the coaching staff specifically that could provide that. What do you think about the rest of the coaching staff, or any more thoughts about Toby?
No, I think I've already shared everything I had on Toby. But I mean, first of all, Wizard Young is the smartest man on the planet. What are you thinking, Nightwing? You can't just disrespect him like that, okay? Just watch it, I guess. But anyway, the other two assistant coaches, MMA and Bongwoori. Wait, is Bongwoori an analyst or a coach? I believe he's a coach now, right?
Uh, I'm not sure. I think I saw Bongwoori listed as an analyst, but
Yeah.
if he's a coach, then I don't know.
Yeah, so I believe he was an analyst in 2019 and then he became a coach. So he's here along with MMA, who has been with the team since season 3 after being promoted from Genji. And I feel like I would have made either of these guys the head coach if it were up to me. But maybe the organization just doesn't trust them enough to make them head coaches, despite having more coaching experience than Toby, which diminishes my confidence in him as well. Because I mean, they don't trust these two guys, and I mean, they trust him. They trust him more than they trust these two guys. So my faith in all three of them has automatically just dropped. But on the plus side, all three coaches have known each other for a couple of years now, so they probably work well with each other. But I'm not sure how MMA and Bonguri feel about not being promoted to the head coach position and instead having a rookie at the helm whom they used to coach. So just a like funny kind of team dynamic to have, and I'm interested to see if it affects the team in any way, and I sure hope not though.
I think in some ways I understand the thinking behind not wanting to put these assistant coaches as head coach, because I mean they've had to had like some hand in whatever strange happenings have been happening in this whole dynasty, where I don't think that the comps were ever really nailed down very well. um, and despite them making to the grand finals in season 3, I don't feel like even that was a very good performance on the coaching front, because they sort of had a similar run to the Washington Justice. It's just that they had better skill and better players to work around in that season. And then in season 4 also, I don't think that they were able to develop their players exceptionally well. I don't think the coaches were able to really work with Profit to develop his Echo very naturally. I think that came far too late. And so, in that sense, I guess there is some sense in not promoting these coaches to head coach, because you want someone else to have a fresh perspective on how you want to deal with this team. But I don't think Toby is that fresh perspective. Uh, but yeah, I guess it remains to be seen. I mean, it's his first coaching gig. Uh, Maybe he just absolutely pops off. There's just no evidence for me to currently think that right now. Uh, so yeah, those are my thoughts on the coaching staff. Uh, Prolius, what do you think this team is going to perform like in general on the Overwatch League scoreboard?
So, so I think Let me just quickly like summarize where I think each of these roles are at, So I think Smurf, like great solo tank player, I think he'll do really well. Fitz, Prophet, and Stalker. With the current playstyle and with the current, or rather the latest direction of the team, I think they'll just be all right. They'll be good, but nothing exceptional. Although I do have a lot of faith in Fitz and Prophet to individually do a lot. Then Vindaim and Creative are pretty good, I guess. Nothing too exceptional once again. Um, I think this team, like, along with the coaching staff, form a semi-competitive kind of roster. Uh, I think a lot of their success is going to rely on the meta and how reliant the meta is going to be on individual plays over communication-based plays. So if Fitz and Profit get to even Smurf maybe if they get to just play individually, in kind of like a deathmatch meta, kind of like what we had with Sigma Hog, but just with the solo tank. I think this is where this team will excel because all you will need is to have better aim than the other guy. So if that's the case, this team will flourish. But with communication and battles of attrition, I think they can suffer losses here. So not really sure where to place them, but I do think they'll be competitive. Maybe enter some playoffs as well, but I don't see them going for the championship.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of little weaknesses in like throughout the roster as well as the coaching staff that does indicate to me that uh, they'll have a hard time reaching that championship. It is a fairly small roster though, and I'm hoping uh, the coaching staff is considering looking at who's actually good in the Overwatch 2 beta coming out very, very soon and seeing who performs well and then picking up a few more pieces because I do want to see them pick up, a traditional off tank player. Uh, I want to see maybe someone like FaZe from O2 Blast picked up just to complement Smurf so that he does not have to play every single tank in the game, right? And I also want to see them maybe pick up another flex support, uh, just so they're well prepared for that, double flex support meta. But obviously, that will probably actually happen in the next tournament cycle instead of the initial tournament cycle. I think it may be a bit too late if they start slipping early on. So I think still a lot of work for the Seoul Dynasty to do. I think going fresh into the season, they're going to have some trouble, uh, especially if, as reported by rumors, it's a more of a off-tank meta. Just because I think Smurf will still struggle a little bit adapting to those heroes, even if I do have a lot of respect for him. So overall, I think I agree with you, Protis, that they'll do well, but not well enough to take any major wins home. So that about wraps it up. Any further thoughts, or should we just say goodbye to the to the dear listeners?
Yeah, I think that's quite a comprehensive analysis on the dynasty. So yeah, I think we can end this episode.
Okay, thank you for watching and listening, guys. If you liked our analysis, then drop a comment. Tell me who you want to see Smurf play the most. Which off tank are you most excited to see Smurf play? Personally, I want to see his diva. Uh, or if you have any other thoughts about our analysis, if you think we're absolutely out of our minds, and if you think Vindaim is going to be Rookie of the Year or something along those lines, let us know in the comments. Do all the YouTube stuff. Help the algorithm so we can annoy more people with our analysis. And that's about it from us. See you guys.